Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Threats, the Ummah, the Islamic community, threats from one end to the next. We'll begin in Pakistan, threats in Pakistan. Then we'll move on to threats in Iraq, and certainly we'll come to threats in Egypt, both now and later on this evening. Egypt, the most important part of the Arab Spring. It is said in all of the Ummah, the Islamic community, there is only one nation. All the rest are tribes. We begin with the tribes of Pakistan, the Pashtun Belt, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Bill Roggio of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, Long War Journal, is here. Bill, a good evening to you. A threat by the al-Qaeda commander, the Pakistani al-Qaeda commander, threatening the government of Nawaz Sharif, threatening Islamabad. Why threaten, and how would they carry this out? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Yeah, it's interesting because the Sharif government has decided, against the wishes of President Zardari, that it's going to carry out some executions of jihadists, mainly members of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is basically an al-Qaeda affiliate in Pakistan. So this dual hat, he's an al-Qaeda commander. He's also the head of the movement of the Taliban in Pakistan. Is Maulana Muawiyah is his name. He's released propaganda for both the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in the past. He's one of the company commanders for Osama bin Laden's units in Afghanistan, or Osama bin Laden named him, basically. And so he issued this threat, and then lo and behold, Pakistan said, we're not going to back down, we're going to do this. And then a couple of days later, they put executions on hold and claiming that out of respect for President Zardari, they're not going to carry out executions. But I suspect the threat probably had a lot to do with this.
So the executions are postponed? They've called them off?
They said that they're postponed. They're supposed to start, I believe, today. Today's the 19th. And they were going to carry them out over the next couple of days. And they declined to carry out the executions, again claiming, well, it would be disrespectful to President Zardari. But when is this government, the PMO,
right.
You know, those guys are at each other's throat all the time.
So right now, the report, this is out of Dawn, that Pakistan al-Qaeda has threatened the government of Pakistan, and the government of Pakistan has climbed down with a odd excuse.
Yes, exactly.
All right, threats work. Let's go to Iraq. Bill has reported much on Iraq, but these last years we've focused on Afghanistan, Pakistan with the ISAF effort. That now coming to an end or closing. We look to Iraq because the U.S. forces, the combat forces, in fact, all elements of the U.S. that I'm familiar with, perhaps there are OGAs there, but in any event, the military is no longer in Iraq. Right now, Bill, my information is that Iraq is being pummeled. There's a lot of violence, a lot of VBID, a lot of suicide attacks, pummeled by two forces. The jihadists from the al-Nusra Front, that's Syria, and al-Qaeda in the Iraq and Levant, and also Iran and its al-Quds force. And does the government, Malaki's government in Baghdad, have the forces to resist?
Yeah, Iraq has always been between this sort of vice from the al-Qaeda threat on one side and the Quds force, the Iranian threat on the other, where they backed what they called the U.S. military when they were in Iraq, called the special groups. It's basically the Shia terror groups. This has been something. The Iraqi government took on the Shia terror groups, as well as al-Qaeda in Iraq, with our backing. But since we've withdrawn, both groups have been able to recuperate, and particularly al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is now the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and the Nusra Front, which is the unit, al-Qaeda's unit in Syria. Those two have really stepped up attacks in Iraq. The attacks are probably about 2005, approaching 2006 levels, which was the height of the insurgency in Iraq. And on the other side, you have pressure from the Iranians. Not as much. You don't see the Shia groups right now active in conducting attacks like they were in 2006, 7, and 8. But my information is they're gearing up to do just that.
The measure here is that, remember Muki Sadr, our old friend, the Sadrists who were part of the resistance in 2006, 2007, during the closing days of the American combat effort to overwhelm the Sunnis, the jihadists, the resistance in Anbar province. Sadr is said to be concerned that they'll be overwhelmed by the jihad, by the jihad coming from al-Nusra Front, overwhelmed in a fashion that has nothing to do with Iraq. This suggests, Bill, that Iraq is not stable. Is that information you get?
Yeah, no, Iraq is definitely not stable. And you had asked me, and I apologize for not answering, is Iraq capable of handling this threat? Without the U.S. assistance,
right.
Unfortunately, over time, it's not. I mean, Iraq hasn't collapsed, but it's slowly getting worse there. And, look, just last week, the Iraq's foreign minister came to the U.S. and said, we need counterterrorism support, we need intelligence support, we want your drones, please send all of this over. And, that's exactly what the U.S. should have left behind after the withdrawing in 2011. But, President Obama had no interest in doing this, instead wanted to fulfill his campaign promise of ending the war in Iraq. Well, it didn't end the war in Iraq. All it did is end U.S. involvement.
Another missed opportunity starting in 2009 with the election in Tehran, and now we talk about the exit of American forces in Iraq, now under double threat from both sides. We mentioned Syria, the civil war there. Assad is winning. He's probably already won it, but let's put it this way. He's winning. There's a futile effort from so-called American inspectors looking for weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons. My information does not confirm chemical weapons used by the Assad regime. However, we must rush to the larger story of Egypt. Bill, the question of Egypt now is on everyone's mind, and my information is that the jihadists are lining up Egypt in the target zone, that what we have here are the early moments of what will become civil disruption or a civil war, depending on how you interpret this. Do you think that all of the jihadists will flow into Egypt, or will they stay in Syria, Bill? They seem to have a fascination with Syria, despite the fact they're on the losing end.
Yeah, look, even though they may be on the losing end in Syria, there's still areas that are going to be under enemy control. I don't think that the Assad regime can ever really fully retake control.
No, it's a fractured country.
It'll be fractured. Yes. So the jihadis will be quite occupied there for years to come. I think and by the way, the insurgency has already begun in Egypt. It's low level now. It's primarily in the Egyptian Sinai.
There were 25 Egyptian policemen butchered by the jihadists in North Sinai. That's the beginning moments of it.
Yes. A drumbeat of violence every day. A policeman or jihadists or several are killed. The Israelis are apparently launching drone strikes in this area now. So I think if it does go full bore in Egypt, you'll have a division of labor. I think that the jihadists that find it more easily to travel to Egypt will certainly do so, probably jihadists from North Africa.
Or Cyrenaica province in eastern Libya.
And so it'll certainly divide the efforts of the jihadists, but I think that really is just an opportunity. And one thing what the Egyptian military did was basically prove Al-Qaeda and Zawahiri and all the critics of the Muslim Brotherhood who said that you shouldn't participate in democracy because they're going to take it from you as soon as you win. Well, that's exactly what happened in Egypt. And what happens to those Muslim brothers in Egypt who, for all these years, fought for democracy or fought to win in a democratic election and now had their power taken away? Where do they turn? Do they turn back to the Muslim Brotherhood, or do they turn to groups like Al-Qaeda who have warned them all these years that it was a false choice?
In Pakistan, which is said to be an army with a state, the Pakistani Al-Qaeda leader has now successfully intimidated the Pakistan government. In Egypt, which can now said to be an army with a state, will the jihadists rise to the ability to threaten governance, to threaten Cairo, and make it back down? That's an open question. I remind you, I will speak much of Egypt later on this night, but my information right now is that General Sisi, the dictator, the man running the governance in Cairo, the head of the tanks and the armored personnel carriers, General Sisi was to have taken a call from President Obama last week. He refused the call. The U.S. is out of the Middle East. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.